Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Senior College Panel. We're so excited to see everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm Allison Wang, and I'm the Director of Outreach of Girls for Business, and we'd like to have a special thank you to our wonderful panelists, Ms. Rachel Wang, Ms. Jessica Lian, Ms. Stephanie Mo, and Ms. Marika Clark for speaking today. Now I'll pass it on to Anna, my co-host of today's event.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna and I'm an outreach coordinator at Girls for Business. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today and we're so excited to see everyone. I hope you've all been having an amazing weekend. And so just so we know who's here and to warm up for today's event, please type your name, grade, and where you're from in the chat. I'm a freshman in high school from Maryland. So today at the Senior College Panel event, we hope to educate, inspire, and empower all middle and high school girls in pursuing a business career. We have 4 highly qualified panelists today from Girls for Business, and they'll be sharing their advice and detailing their experiences through high school with the college admissions process, as well as their commitment journeys. We know the process can be pretty confusing and stressful, so we're extremely excited for our 4 amazing panelists to share all their diverse experiences with you all today, and we really hope you gain lots of insight onto your journey.
So now here is a full rundown of today's event structure. First, I'll be briefly introducing our organization, Girls for Business, and sharing our initiatives with you all. Our wonderful panelists will then be introducing themselves, sharing their general experiences, and speaking on general tips for the admissions processes. Then we'll segue into the main portion of our event, which is our panel discussion. Our panelists will offer deeper insights into the college admissions process and balancing studies and extracurriculars through it all, answering topics and questions we received from you guys in our event RSVP form. We'll also give you guys the chance to ask questions live during the discussion. After, you'll get to participate in a short 10-minute breakout session where each panelist will go further into depth about their specific experience with their dream school, major, and more. Finally, we'll wrap up the event with a group photo and provide panelists contact information if you have any further inquiries for anyone and how to get involved with our organization and future events. So now, a little bit about Girls for Business. Girls for Business is a student-led nonprofit organization that's dedicated to empowering middle and high school girls interested in exploring business career pathways. Established in June 2020 and run by a team of over 100 members, Girls for Business has impacted thousands of girls worldwide through its platforms. By providing free mentorship programs, business news, educational virtual events, and engaging resources, our team hopes to create a platform where girls can find business guidance and establish strong connections with like-minded young women. Girls for Business runs 3 educational programs: our business mentorship program, our business resource program, and our business networking program. The business mentorship program has provided free business membership to over 170 mentees, with our 3rd cycle ongoing right now. Our resource program has released over 45 bi-weekly business newsletters and with educational resources and business news. Our community platforms has also connected over 4,000 girls from 60 countries across the globe. Now I'll pass it on to Anna to introduce our panelists.
These next 2 slides give a brief overview of our panelists' college commitments and roles here at GFB, but I'll pass it on to them to explain more themselves. Rachel, if you could get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm a graduating senior from Richard Montgomery High School in Maryland. And this fall, I will be continuing my studies at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. So there, I plan to concentrate in finance and management. And today, I will be happy to talk about a little bit about my activities that I pursued in high school, as well as some of my interests. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have about anything regarding those. So just to recap, I am the founder and executive director of Girls for Business, the organization that you're hearing from this event today. I also worked as the president of Maryland DECA, which is a business club that works in business competitions, presentations, role plays, everything along those lines. And I also served as a finance intern at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, where I worked in government contracting, financing, and planning budgets along for corporate life. And at the University of Pennsylvania, I was a summer research intern studying mergers and acquisitions, where I used research databases to acquire information regarding various corporate acquisitions. I was also a summer intern at a business startup, Public Spend Forum, which essentially was an information services startup kind of specializing along the venture capital field. And then at school, I participated in various business and economics related clubs. I was the co-president of our School Future Business Leaders of America club this past year. And I was also a member of our economics club, DECA, and a few other service clubs as well. I also have a lot of interests in journalism, so I was able to serve as the news editor of my high school newspaper, and I also worked as editor-in-chief for other local organizations, including Chinese American publications, and so on. I would say that for me, as I'm pursuing a business pathway for my future career, my main interests right now focus around like the ESG field, which stands for environmental social governance. And I'm also interested in exploring the fields of corporate strategy, sustainable investment, and also consulting. And then aside from professional areas, some of my hobbies include playing the flute. I'm a huge fan of classical music and also 70s music. And in my free time, I love trying out new cafes with friends and playing tennis with my family.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Next, I'll pass it on to Jessica.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica. It's super awesome to be here with you today. I am also a graduating senior from Maryland, and I am an incoming freshman at Harvard, where I intend on studying econ and data science. In terms of some of the activities that I did in high school, so obviously Girls for Business, I am the business analytics editor-in-chief here at GFB and have been with GFB for 4 years since its founding. So that's really exciting. Other activities that I did debate, specifically public forum, and we started our school's debate team. I also co-founded our school's DECA chapter and then competed in DECA as well my senior year. And then I interned as a business development associate for a pharmaceutical company, where I reached out to other companies and helped with promoting this new product that they had. And then I also did a lot of STEM work in high school. So I interned at an imaging lab my junior summer, and then I also co-authored a research paper on HPV integration in my junior year as well. And then besides all of that, I played viola for, I think, like 7 years now. I played in the state orchestra, and I also played in quartet outside of school. And yeah, so in terms of my business interests and future plans, I am still very undecided in terms of what exactly I want to do in business, but I am looking more towards the quantitative side, and I am really interested in business analytics, so might go into that path, but also I'm really looking forward to exploring a lot in college and hopefully being able to try a bunch of different areas, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Now I'll pass it on to Stephanie.
Hi guys, my name is Stephanie. I'm also a graduating senior from Maryland, and I'm an incoming freshman at Washington University in St. Louis, or WashU, into their business school. And I'm going to be majoring in supply chain and operations management, which is basically just like supply chains. So some of the things I did in high school, I was the director of mentorship here at Girls for Business. So the mentorship program that Anna and Allison were talking about, that's what that is. And then I was also a self-employed photographer. So I basically just, I knew how to take pictures because I took photography classes in school. So I decided to make a business out of it. So I've taken pictures of families in my neighborhood and some of my friends, just turned that into a business. And I've also won awards for my pictures. And then I was also on the Maryland DECA advisory board, which was new this year. And that's basically where you just kind of join monthly meetings and you talk about Maryland DECA and ideas, and it's a lot of fun. And then I was also an intern at the University of Maryland, where I analyzed supply chain case studies. And then I was also an accounting intern at a drug development company. And then I'm also a rower, so I've competed at the regional level, and I'm going to be competing in nationals this summer. And then as for my interests and future plans, so I'm very interested in the intersection between business and politics and how each one kind of plays out the other. And I would really like to start my own business one day, but I don't know for sure. So yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And last but not least, I'll pass it on to Marika.
Hi, everyone. As she said, I'm Marika. I'm a rising freshman from Maryland, and I will be going to the University of Virginia, hopefully with a double major in public health and biology. So in addition to being the ambassador director at GFB, I was also a varsity debater for Public Forum, and I was president and captain of my school's team. In addition to that, I started a sustainable clothing business called Dress by Calamari on Instagram, and I've run that for the past 5 years, I believe. So along with that, I was the marketing director at the Global Youth Economics Forum. And in addition to those business interests, I've also had a very strong interest in STEM, as you can tell from my intended major. So I was a research intern at the UChicago School of Medicine, where we were investigating the causal factors behind the heterogeneity in outcomes for women with endometrial cancer, and just writing up a meta-analysis for that. And I was also working at the molecular biology department for Howard University. So aside from those more academic-based things, I'm a member of a professional chorus where we've traveled internationally to different countries, and we've also performed at places like the Kennedy Center. And I've been a member of that course since 6th grade. And in terms of future plans, I hope to work within epidemiology or microbiology, but I'm still not quite sure if I want to do something that's more policy related or more within a lab. So yeah, really nice to meet everyone.
Thank you so much, Marika. We'll now be transitioning to our panel discussion and Q&A, where we'll be first starting off with a couple of the most frequently asked questions and requested topics from you guys in the RSVP form. But before we transition directly into this discussion and Q&A, we'd like to give you a heads up that we'll be splitting into breakout rooms led by each of our panelists shortly after. And if a specific panelist that just introduced themselves interests you, please private message Rachel your top 2 choices as soon as possible, and we'll try to take that information into account when assigning the breakout rooms. Now, starting off, our first and most frequently asked question to our panelists is, what are the reasons that you think got you accepted or made your application stand out among so many others?
I can start. So I think this goes for all of us when we don't know exactly what got us into our colleges, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I think that what helped me stand out in my application was, I think that I had a very well-rounded application. I didn't really have like a very specific, like, oh, every single one of my activities were, one like business focus or something like that, which I think everyone has their own way of doing it. But for me personally, because I had things in business and then I had things in STEM, I was able to kind of make that my narrative in terms of wanting to look at like business and STEM intersections and stuff like that. And I think with that, like, not only did I have, my leadership in school, in clubs, which I made that a very big part of my application, especially in my essays writing about leadership. I also had, things that I did for fun. And I feel like that helped me look more like a genuine person who like people would want to be friends with. So like not just focusing on my academic work, but also thinking about what type of person I am outside of school, or what type of person I am outside of the classroom. I would say I had like a very big focus of that on my application. And then also with my essays, I think that I did a decent job at making, at exploring a side to myself that wasn't shown in my activities. So specifically in my Common App essay, I wrote about, how I was able to transform from someone who used to be super shy and like never took any risks, and then finding like this ability to really dive like headfirst into risk and trying new things. So I think like that's a basic overview of what I think got me in.
Yeah, adding on to Jessica's explanation of like a very multifaceted approach, which you want to present yourself with on the application, I would say that at the same time, you do want to kind of make it clear that you have a lot of involvement with your personal passions, with your academic interests, and you want to kind of carve out a little bit of a niche for yourself in terms of the activities and the areas of knowledge that you make yourself appear interested in. So for me, my leading passion was business. I became interested with business and specifically finance relatively early around my freshman year. So once I knew that was what I was kind of interested in, I guided like the next 4 years of high school and geared those experiences more towards like a business kind of edge. So I kind of immersed myself in different professional experiences like internships or research opportunities. And at the same time, like kind of balancing that out in terms of like the nonprofit and service type through my work with Girls for Business. And with all of that, I kind of carved out that business niche for myself based on like my future plans.
I think for me also, when I was, looking into schools, just doing a lot of research on like the schools that you especially want to go to. So if you're doing like an ED application, especially like research into what that school has to offer. And so like, for example, for me, I looked into the business programs that WashU had to offer. And, they had this field trip that they took every year that they took students on a 2-week trip to, Wall Street to explore the career opportunities there. And they took students on a luxury goods field trip to experience the business behind, luxury goods. So just like knowing specific things about your school that you would want to be partaking in and writing about that in your essay just makes you stand out from everyone else who's just like applying just to apply. So that's what I would say.
I'll speak a little bit on both what Stephanie was saying and also Jessica in terms of her like multifaceted application. So I definitely think for like the why essays that you're going to write for each particular school, trying to figure out ways to convey not just why you want to go to that school, but what you have to offer that, from your unique experiences, what you can give to the school. So definitely looking in terms of specifics, like for example, if I'd find a researcher who had done work similar to what I'd done and just saying, I already have experience within this field, I would love to continue learning, but also be able to contribute some of the research that I learned at XYZ. So obviously doing that in a humble sense, but conveying in a sense that you also have something to give to the school in addition. So it's like a mutual transaction in a way. Also on what Jessica was saying about having a pretty well-rounded application, I think that was also rung true for me, but something I tried to do with my essays was kind of fill in the gaps with what was happening with my stats. So obviously I have some more random things going on. In addition to STEM internships, I was in a chorus and I did a lot of business, and you could be, how does that end up with public health? But I tried to piece together that narrative and really write a story for these admissions officers as to how all of these different and all of these very varied experiences really led to this final passion of public health. So it didn't seem so random.
Thank you all so much for your answers. I feel like that was really informative. Something else many of our attendees wanted to know from each panelist was, looking back, is there anything you would have done a little differently during your high school journey to better prepare for college?
I think for me, I would say probably, I know that people say this a lot and it is annoying to hear, but probably just really focusing on your grades. So if you're like a freshman right now, like obviously there isn't a whole lot you can do because, most internships look for like older kids. So I think the most you can do is just like really find what you're passionate about and just focus on, schoolwork. I know for me personally, I did not get the best grades freshman year. And I do kind of look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I did kind of focus more on school. So if you're like a freshman or a sophomore, just make sure that you're doing your best to get, to do your best in school. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, kind of relating to that, I have a few answers. So this is like high school in general. I definitely agree with Stephanie, but also making sure that, especially if you're a freshman or sophomore, that you're joining not a lot, but like joining clubs that you think that you might possibly want to go into. And that way, if you have more options early into your high school career, when you're like a junior or senior, you can really find the like 3 or like 2 or 3 clubs that you really want to dedicate your time to, and that way it's not too hard to like join a new club when you're a bit older in high school. Also just like trying new things early into your high school career. I came into high school and I joined debate for the first time, had never wanted to do debate in the past, but I just joined and it ended up being one of my main activities. So things like that. And then in terms of the college, or not college, but in terms of like senior year of high school, what I would do differently is not being super hung up on, this sounds like very cliche again, but the results, especially throughout the early process. So I actually ED to a school and didn't get in early, and then had to like do all my regular applications. And I think that something that I would have done differently is not taken that ED deferral as hard as I did, and make sure that whatever happens, it's not in your control. So just remembering that you can do everything right in your application, but it might not work out, especially with the early results, but you should definitely keep trying to do whatever you're doing. And especially with the regular schools, there are a lot more regular schools and you still have way more chances. So if you're a rising senior in high school, just remember that, just keep trying your best, and you'll have somewhere that you're going to be happy with at the end.
Okay, I think my greatest tip would be to take advantage of your summers. I think like the 10, 11 weeks you have in summer are so full of freedom and a lot of opportunity. I would say for the most part in high school, especially in your upperclassmen years, you'll get really bogged down by like academics. So I would say take advantage of your summers, especially as a rising freshman or sophomore. And use those times to kind of hone in on exploring your personal interests or academic interests. If you're an upperclassman and you're looking to get into more like professional opportunities like internships or research, I would say definitely start early with trying to scout those out. If you're entering like a cold emailing process, I would say a good time to begin would be around like May, mid-May, maybe even as early as the end of April, I think, is when professors, if you're looking for research, or employers are kind of like planning for their summers, but that's like a good time frame to kind of look into. But I would say going into summer, make sure that you have kind of like a summer schedule set up for yourself, goals that you want to work on, and really make the most out of the free time that you have.
I have 2 different things, one that's more generally towards high school, but I'd say let your passions guide your extracurriculars, but also make sure to really act on those passions. So kind of like what Jessica was saying, like when, even though like for me as well with debate, when I had a slight interest in debate, I just acted on it and that really led to something. And similar with Thirst by Calamari, I had like this small interest in entrepreneurship and that's just something I decided to explore, which like became something big. So if you have like any of these keen small interests or passions, I'd say you really have to make sure to act on those. But on the flip side, make sure to not be doing extracurriculars just because you think they're going to look good for college. And the same thing with classes, like don't be taking really hard classes simply because you think they're going to look good for colleges, because a lot of times those can end up not being as helpful. And again, with crafting a narrative at the end, it can be a little more difficult if you weren't really interested in those things in the first place. In terms of senior year or the senior summer, I would say creating a schedule for your essays, including your supplemental essays, and really sticking to those, because something that I found difficult is I spent the majority of the early summer more focused on my Common App, and that meant I was spending most of the later end of the summer and my senior fall working on the supplementals. And I think that made things a lot more stressful for me and more stressful than it needed to be. So I know a lot of people often say this, but like, I cannot emphasize it enough. Create that schedule for the summer and stick to it. And that gives you ample time to edit your essays, to get people to read your essays, and to really have time to reflect on if this is the information that you're wanting to give to colleges.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that was really important advice, especially the part about summers, because I know it's coming up. So another common question was, what would you guys' biggest advice on writing that Common App essay or those supplemental essays? And some people were wondering if you minded sharing what your essays were actually about.
Okay, I think advice on the overall application, I would say to structure your application so that you showcase a little bit of your identity in each of the segments. So for example, for my own application, I talked a lot of my business interests and I incorporated a lot of that into a narrative sort of style for my personal statement. And then for the rest of my supplementals, which varied for each school, I spent those kind of segments talking about different parts of my identity. So for example, I talked about my love for classical music in a specific supplement that asked me to expand upon one of my like artistic interests. And then I spend other times like when I was given like, I think a question about my greatest challenge faced, I talked about my experience working as a journalist for a reporting organization I was a part of. So through like the different streamlining of parts of my identity that I was able to kind of subdivide within different parts, I think I was able to kind of showcase my identity more fully in the multifaceted way that was referred to earlier this panel. But I would say take advantage of that and be sure to evenly showcase all parts of yourself throughout the application.
Yeah, I definitely 100% agree with what Rachel said. I think something that like I didn't really realize until I was writing my essays is colleges only have what you give them. So if on your activities, like you have a bunch of business activities, stuff like that, or your STEM activities, your essays are really your only chance at showing them who you are. So like if you were to look at yourself and just say like these are the personalities that I want to come through or that I want colleges to see about me, that's what should be evenly spread throughout your essay. So for the Common App essay, or I think for all essays in general, no matter how young you are, I think it's a very good idea to just start a notes document of running ideas. If you're in like 6th grade, you can start it then. If you're a junior, you can start it right now. But just keeping a running idea of any essay topic that you can think of. A lot of times they'll come to you when you're like randomly doing something. Sometimes I'll like wake up at 2 a.m. and add an idea to the list. You'll find that when you actually start writing your essays, it's a lot easier. So like the Common App, which is the essay that I wrote first, I went through my whole entire notes doc. I talked to my parents, and then we thought about, which one could best be like a Common App essay. And then I just wrote that draft in one sitting. And then I looked at it and evaluated, is this like something that can actually be a Common App, or do I need to try a different idea? And I think it's very important that you do go through different trials. And I think everyone here can agree that we probably went through like 15 different versions of our Common App. So just making sure that you have that time to try out different ideas. And then you'll find that once you have that Common App done, the rest of those ideas on your notes doc, you can actually use for your supplementals too. So I think that made it a lot easier for me to brainstorm just because I had everything in one place. And then in terms of my actual Common App like topic or whatever, I ended up writing about like I've been a skier since I was really, really young. So I ended up writing about how skiing kind of shaped like my personality and how it spread to different other parts of myself. And I know a lot of people say not to write about sports. So I didn't write about sports or skiing in a way like a generic skier would or a generic sports person would. So I think also a lot of people say, don't write about the super cliche ways, but try to use like you can use something that's more cliche but write about it in a more unique way if you can't think of any other idea as well. And then and then for supplementals, I ended up like choosing a couple big parts of myself that I wanted to showcase and then writing about those. So for example, one of mine like things that I wanted to write about was how I loved teaching and how that like came about in I coach skiing, but also teaching debate and stuff like that. And then you can use that kind of topic or that kind of idea about yourself for so many different college supplementals. A lot of them will overlap a lot. So you'll find that once you have like a couple big parts of yourself that you want to showcase, it's a lot easier to split it into all of those essays.
Yeah, I can also talk first with the Common App. I definitely wouldn't say this is a necessity, but I had a friend who recommended this book called Write Your Way In, which is by a former like Duke admissions officer. So kind of like what Jessica was saying with the notes doc, as I was reading the book, I just kind of went and put thoughts for different essay topics or different ways that just like different random thoughts that I had that could possibly apply for my Common App essay. So I think I took like a month or 2 months to read this book. I started in the spring, and I really just took that time reading to digest all the things that I wanted to talk about. And kind of similar to what Jessica was saying earlier, I wanted to take this Common App essay as an opportunity to really humanize myself in comparison to everything that was seen with my stats and my grades and my, teacher recommendations. So I actually ended up writing about my relationship with my dad and just the ways that our journey and learning how to communicate with each other, but also like the unique ways that he's inspired my intellectual curiosity. So I think there are many different routes that you can take when writing your Common App essay, but for me, I just wanted to touch on a time that was extremely vulnerable in my memory, because I felt that by sharing that with, these admissions officers, they were seeing a part of me emotionally that I really hadn't shared with many people. And yeah, and then in terms of my supplementals, I think I also tried to, add in a lot of background or a lot of context for what was seen within my activities. But I also liked to talk more about, I had some essays where I talked about my heritage and just the different ways that my family history has also shaped my life and how that's shaped the different things I've done throughout my life. And also being able to, craft that in a more academic sense as well, what I hope to do in the future. Just having a very centered like vision for the way that I go throughout life and kind of the morals and the values that I hold in every decision that I make. So yeah, besides that, I think I basically use very similar strategies to what the other panelists have talked about.
I don't know if this has been said already, but I would really recommend starting early. So just like you have the entire summer before senior year. And so the Common App releases, or colleges usually release like their supplementals on August 1st, I believe. And so just like once you get the prompts for the schools that you want to apply to, just start brainstorming ideas and just start writing as much as you can. And I know that sounds kind of boring because it's the summer, but I think like the start of senior year, as per the start of any school year, is just always so hectic and busy. And you think you're gonna have time, but like you actually won't. And so I would say, like, me personally, I started writing some essays like towards the middle of August, and then I would, complete them. And then I looked back at them like a month later and I was like, this is terrible. Like, what was I thinking? So, and then I got to fix it in time. But if you don't do that, you might be submitting something that you're not exactly proud of. So just try to start early is my thing. And then along with that, with all of your supplementals, depending on how many schools you're applying to, you could be writing like upwards of 20, 30, 40 supplemental essays, and it's a lot. So I would say just like creating hard deadlines for yourself, like every week I need to have like the supplementals for XYZ schools done, like no excuses, because it does kind of, it gets to a lot. And if you don't have that, just like discipline, I guess, it does kind of snowball, and then you're probably going to be freaking out like right before the deadline. So just to like save yourself, I would say deadlines is super important. And then also it just never hurts to have like a friend read your essay, or, your parents. I know it's like awkward asking them like to read. That's how I felt, but I think it's really important just to have like multiple people looking at what you wrote to get more feedback and things like that.
This is one small note just on what Stephanie was saying, but because there are so many supplementals, I'd say having a method of organization for how you're dealing with all of those is super important. So I personally used a spreadsheet where I just listed, like, in bold, there would be the name of the college, and then underneath was the like general question that each supplemental was asking, and just having a list of those and being able to, write completed, in process, have yet to start. Because if you do have, upwards of 40 supplementals that you're having to write, it's really easy to lose track of not only like when they're due, but which ones you have done and which ones you have yet to work on. So I'd say definitely making sure that you have a method of organization set before that August 1st deadline even comes around.
Okay, thank you for your answers, everybody. And since we're now around halfway through our event discussion time, we wanted to open up the floor to live questions from all of our attendees. We know you submitted a lot of them and we weren't able to get to all of them. So if you have any, now is the time to ask the panelists any questions you have in the Zoom chat, or if you would like to verbally ask your question, please private message Rachel and we'll spotlight you.
How did you condense like everything you did within an organization or a club into only the 150 characters in the Common App?
I think that's a really, really good question that I definitely had a lot of trouble with. I definitely think focus on what is quantitative about what you did. So for example, Girls for Business, an amazing organization that Rachel founded that has a lot of different things that you can highlight, but because I was editor-in-chief, I focused on what exactly, I brought in, like in terms of the writing team. So one thing that I did is I said, we have like, I don't know how many subscribers at the time to our newsletter, which is what I was in charge of. And this grew by this 100 number, or like, I think it was like 400 since I became editor-in-chief. And then other like things like that, or, we interviewed 10 businesswomen to create a Girls for Business woman in business documentary. So things that are like very, that you can actually measure, and also like with the numbers, it kind of condenses it a little bit. So you're not like, oh, and then I interviewed this person, then I interviewed this person. It's just like, okay, we did this, and it's able to make it a lot shorter. Also, when you're starting to do this, I would recommend making a whole document with each of your activities and just writing anything you can think of first. And then once you like have everything that you want to include, it's a lot easier to cut down in terms of I want to highlight these few things, and then going from there. And also you can ask your parents or friends, anyone else to help you cut, because it is a lot easier to cut from an outside perspective.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at my Common application right now and it's kind of like flashing back. I would say, adding on to Jessica, in terms of like the kind of metrics that you want to highlight, you also want to make sure that you're using strong, very active, like action verbs to discuss the activities that you've completed for each of them. So I would say instead of like more passive verbs like helped or assisted, maybe you want to include a more like active tense, like words like spearheaded or strategized. And there are lots of great resources online if you want to kind of look at them that might like tailor more directly with your application. But I would say just using active verbs is really important. And also, this is just what I did for my Common application, but when I was like separating each of the little like sub bullet points within each activity description, I used semicolons. So for example, I did like directed XYZ project semicolon, led XYZ initiative, which is just a format that worked for me.
Great, thank you so much. One of the questions from the chat was, what did you guys think was the most useful method that you employed in getting internships, for example, just searching online or cold email? And what would be your tips on that?
I can I can say for one thing, so one of my internships I got through my school, but the other internship I got through this program called the Copula program, which I can type the name in the chat. But it was started by a group of college students, and essentially their entire initiative is just connecting high schoolers with various college professors in whatever fields they're interested in. And so normally that's going to be a 1 month long internship. But what was cool is when I got to the end of my month, he asked, do you want to continue doing this? And I said, absolutely. So we just continued doing that internship throughout the rest of the year. And it was completely free. There's just an application that goes along with it. So it's not a guaranteed admission. But I found that to be a really nice way that you're almost guaranteed to be paired with a college professor for at least a month. And getting to even just form that connection, I found is really valuable.
I think leveraging your connections and just like kind of thinking about who you know. So obviously you probably have friends, and your friends' parents probably, work. And so just like finding out like what they do, and if it's something that you're even remotely interested in, just sending them an email, giving them a phone call, just asking them about like if there's anything at their office that you could help out with, or things like that. And I know it's like a little bit awkward, just like, asking your friends about what their parents do, or like if you already know, just like it is a little bit awkward at first, but it does really help you in the long run. I would say both of my internships, like the UMD professor that I worked with, he was a family friend, and he was more than happy to, guide me through and, teach me things about like supply chain. And he was so great with like analyzing the cases and things like that. And then the other internship I got was through another family friend, and she was working at the startup, and she said, like, do you want to come help us? And I was like, absolutely. So I would say just like really thinking about the people in your network already.
Furthering on everyone's points, I think for me, I pursued research internships with academic university professors. So what was really helpful for me when going through the ColdML process was looking at online like faculty directories, especially those professors teaching in my line of interest, which was finance. So I looked at like online directories. I reached out based on the professors I thought had like interesting research projects that I would be fascinated to explore more through a potential internship with them. And I would say for those of you who might be a little bit nervous about like getting into like kind of university research work, I would say definitely don't be, because professors like see you like as a high school student. They know that you haven't had much experience. If you're like looking along the lines of business, you haven't had much experience to much opportunity to gain experiences. So I think just from my experience, professors are generally pretty lenient and encouraging of helping you learn more, explore more, and answer any questions you have. So definitely don't be daunted to approach the process.
We also had another question from the chat. An attendee asked, how did you find your interest/major? Did they just pop up, or did you go for your gut and then develop them over time?
This kind of goes back to what I was saying about beginning of high school / like early in your high school career, trying out a bunch of different things. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do until like pretty much my senior year. And I'm still not 100% sure, but because my freshman year, I did try out a bunch of different activities. I joined Girls for Business without knowing much about business. I had my STEM activities, and I did that for like a couple of years before really, finding out like I like business a lot, but I also like STEM, and then seeing where that would take me. So I think definitely a big way is just trying out things and seeing what you like. Also with your classes, I know high school classes aren't that in depth, but I think they gave me a pretty decent idea in terms of I do want to go into more like mathy stuff rather than English or history. So like looking at what you really find interesting in your classes. And I will say at the end of the day, the major that you apply as really isn't that big of a deal, because a lot of people do switch their majors in college. So it's totally fine to not know what you want to do. A lot of people apply undecided, and you can also just apply as a major that fits well with your activities, even if you're not 100% sure you want to do it, because the point of college is that you can explore.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you everyone for all your questions. Sadly, it looks like we're nearing the end of our event time and we can conclude our discussion and Q&A. We'll now be transitioning into our breakout rooms where you'll spend 10 minutes with one of our panelists, learning more about their specific college admissions and commitment experience. You should see a pop-up to join a breakout room soon, and hope you enjoy, and we'll see you soon.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, for this breakout, it will just be 10 minutes. If there are any questions that you guys want me to cover or you previously put into the chat or they were not able to be answered, just feel free to let me know. You can either unmute or put into chat again. Okay, I see a question from Yan Lee. How do I decide how many schools to apply to? So I think this is pretty much dependent on, I guess, like your personal interests and just like the level of like applications that you think you can handle with scheduling. I would say a recommendation I have is to apply to around 2 to 3 safety schools. That's generally a good number of safeties to have. And then for targets and reach schools, which if you're unfamiliar, target schools are like based on your stats or your like test scores and GPA and everything. Target schools are schools that you have like kind of like 50 to 60% chance of making it in. Reach schools are kind of like what they sound like. Reach schools, you have like maybe like a 10 to 20% chance of making it in. And then safety schools are generally like you have an 80 to 90% shot of making it in. So again, I would say 2 to 3 safety schools, and then maybe 5 or 6 targets, and then 5 or 6 reaches, depending on your own preference. For reach schools, I would say this is the category of schools that might depend on just like how comfortable you are with applying to and researching how many schools you are, because I will say the college research process will get pretty harrowing to a point, so you want to make sure that you budget enough time for yourself. Okay, next question. What advice would you give for rising 9th graders in terms of starting early? So first of all, props as a 9th grader to already kind of starting looking into the college application process. Definitely super impressive. I would say don't get too buried down with like the prospects of planning for college just yet. I would say, especially for your underclassmen years of 9th and 10th grade, this is a really good time to just explore like new academic interests that you might have. So for example, you heard some of the other panelists talk about how they kind of explored business as a prospective like interest type in their lower classmen years. So joining new clubs is a great way to do that. Getting involved with clubs at your school's club fairs or any other opportunities that are available. Other than that, I would say joining extracurriculars outside of school if you're interested in playing sports, just kind of committing to that. I will say that for the college application process in particular, college admission officers will want to see that you are like heavily involved in the activities that you're passionate about across all 4 years of high school. So I would say if you have narrowed it down to a few interests that you're really passionate about, make sure that you're staying involved in those commitments. You can share that through passion projects that you're doing or kind of leadership positions that you eventually take on as you rise in seniority up like the club ladder. So those are a couple ways I would say you can be prepared. Next question, were there any awards you won over the course of high school that you thought were significant in your application process? Awards, I would say a lot of my awards were focused on either business or music. and a few journalism awards. So they pretty much lined up with my overall like academic and extracurricular interests. A lot of what I did with competition was with DECA and FBLA, two very large business clubs. So I participated in my state DECA and FBLA conferences every year. And then I attained the international recognition with placement at our international DECA conference. So those were a couple of awards I thought were pretty substantial to my application. I would say for interests that you have on your application, you want to participate in clubs that are like widely recognized as legitimate. So for example, for business, DECA and FBLA are kind of like internationally recognized, especially to admissions officers who review like hundreds of thousands of applications. So definitely joining clubs that you can kind of show your skill and level to in the eyes of admissions officers that way. Next question. Can you talk about your process on starting? I think that's GFB. Sure. So I started GFB in my freshman year summer. So this was right around when COVID hit and we were in quarantine. So I thought about starting like a passion project with the time that I had on my hands with the COVID era. So along with two of my friends, we co-founded Girls for Business as a nonprofit that would be able to spread our own love and passion for business education by supporting other females who are interested in pursuing it at the middle and high school levels. So at the time, there were a lot of other like student-run nonprofit organizations popping up. So I definitely drew a lot of inspiration from those and kind of marked my own niche in the way that we expanded. I kind of prioritized the impact that an organization would make from the very get-go. I would say that a lot of student organizations that start early might fall apart because there's not like a cohesive message or like a cohesive plan to action of providing impact, which is ultimately what a nonprofit is supposed to do. So we really settled on the whole impact initiative by creating 3 different programs that we mainly used to start off GFB. So these were mentorship, community, and education. So we created like our mentorship program that provides concrete one-on-one mentorship with college professionals and high school students. We created monthly events like the one you're attending right now that would operate on a regular cycle. So I think like the main focus of what led to us creating a nonprofit was definitely the impact facet. Next question, how did you balance your time between academics, personal interests, and extracurriculars? A great question, and it's definitely something that you will have to figure out yourself along the way with the challenges that it holds. And I will admit that it does get very challenging across your 4 years in high school. I will say that it's important to keep yourself on a structured schedule. I think that a lot of productivity tools definitely made my time in high school balancing a load of different extracurriculars much easier. So kind of like I mentioned earlier with the summer schedule plan, like using Google Calendar to structure out each day, using apps like To-Do List, and a personal favorite of mine is Fiveable. I'll put it in the chat. But it's essentially a study tool that you can study with a partner for various tasks that you're doing throughout the day. So it keeps you accountable and you have a study buddy as you kind of go on to accomplish all the to-do lists of each day. So I would say that accountability trackers were definitely the way to go. Another question, did you get into Penn through early action or early decision or regular decision? Were there any schools you applied REA to, and is it really that much harder to get into schools regular decision? Okay, so addressing the first question first, I was accepted into UPenn through the early decision program. They don't actually have an early action program. It's just the binding ED decision. I did not apply to any schools REA because the R in REA stands for restrictive. So restrictive early action, which means you can only apply to one school under that restrictive action. So just to kind of lay it out, it gets really confusing and technical, but REA, you can only apply to one school for a commitment for, so you can't apply early decision and also REA. But for early action schools in general, you're usually allowed to apply to any number of other schools that are also early action plan. Do I have any college interview tips or just interviews in general? Okay, we have a little bit of time left, so I might not finish your question answer. But for college interviews, I would say they're pretty generic. You can find a lot of the frequently asked questions online. There are like interview books that are available online if you Google search them, but it's kind of, I would say, just prepare to answer questions about the extracurriculars. Interviewers will be getting your common application that you submit, your college application in full. So they'll be directing the questions based on that. So make sure you're really familiarized with your own application, since the interviewers will largely be kind of guiding their inquiries along those lines of your activities, your interests, and what you really see yourself, how you really see yourself thriving in their college campus or community. And then someone asked, did I submit my test scores? Yes, I submitted my my SAT and my AP scores. And then final question was, what was the hardest essay prompt you had to write, and how many revisions do you usually make on an essay? A lot, I will say. It's definitely a very iterative process, and it varies for each person. I would say for me, for my personal statement in general, I think it took about like 2 months to fully edit and revise back and forth. So it's definitely going to be a very thorough process. So definitely be patient with yourself throughout it all. That's all the time we have. So see you guys in the main room.
Group photo. Welcome back, everyone. We're now going to take a quick pause to take a Zoom group picture. If everyone could turn on your camera, we'll take 2 pictures. And for the second picture, we kind of like a tradition here to use small hand hearts in our second picture. So yeah. So I'll count to 3 twice. 1, 2, 3. And then the second picture with our hand hearts. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. So Girls for Business will be posting event recaps on our Instagram, LinkedIn, and also releasing an article on this event shortly. So make sure you stay tuned for all our social media info at the end of the event during our wrap up.
So now moving on to the next slide, we have all of our panelists' contact information. So if any of you would like to reach out later on or have any more questions that we unfortunately weren't able to get to today, you can reach out via email or connect with them on LinkedIn. So feel free to take a picture of this slide, and I'll wait a little bit.
I don't know why my email's not in there. In my LinkedIn, I put it in there, but I can put it in the chat for everyone who wants it.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So now we'll be dropping a link to our event feedback form in the chat. And then if you guys could use this, it just takes around like 1 to 2 minutes to complete, and we'd really appreciate any feedback you have from today to make our future GFB events possible and even better. So now moving on, hopefully everyone has a picture. If not, I can always move back.
Now, finally, wrapping up with a Girls for Business plug, be sure to follow us on all our socials to stay updated with all GFB content. For more content on the latest business news and helpful business tricks, check out our other socials at Girls for Business on Instagram and LinkedIn, and our website at girlsforbusiness.org. As I mentioned earlier, event recaps will be posted on all these platforms. So for everyone currently attending, if you'd like to be tagged in the Instagram post, feel free to leave your Instagram handle in the chat and connect with others in this call. I'll give everyone just a couple seconds to message their usernames. Yeah, And so we know that this slide includes a lot of links and account profiles, so be sure to take a picture to refer back to it later. Finally, if you would like to get involved with the Girls for Business community, here are some ways that you can. To access all of these links, take a picture of the slide here to scan the QR code. So firstly, as a middle or high school student, you can apply to become a mentee. Mentees receive one-to-one mentorship from a business college student or business professional over the course of 10 weeks. So mentee applications for the GFB mentorship program are open year-round, and the application link is listed on the screen. Also, you can subscribe to our mailing list to receive newsletters featuring the latest news in business, career tips, and business opportunities. Scan the QR code to join our mailing list. Additionally, you can join our team at Girls for Business. We are currently accepting applications for team roles, and we would love to work with you guys in the future. The application links are listed in the screen. And lastly, you can join our community Slack to network with girls with similar interests and build connections with girls from all over the world. The invitation to join is in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide.
And that brings us to the end of our senior college panel event. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for teaching us about their experiences with the college admissions and commitment process. We learned so much from you, and we thank you for taking the time to speak today. Additionally, a huge thank you to all of our participants for taking the time out of their day to attend this event as well. If you have any additional questions or even suggestions for Girls for Business, please feel free to stay behind for a few minutes, and we'd love to chat with you. For everyone else, I hope you all had an amazing time today, and we hope to see you all again at future Girls for Business events. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.